Good day, beautiful people. Today we will take a look at your bacteriology as a course or as a major subject in the curriculum for medical laboratory science. Again, in the curriculum for BS MLS. Okay? By definition, your bacteriology is a branch of microbiology. When you say logy again, that is study of. And yes, your bacteriology is a branch of microbiology that is focused on the study of bacteria. So what are you studying here? You study the structure of the bacteria, the physiology of the bacteria, the genetics of the bacteria, as well as the ecology and the role in disease accordingly. When you say clinical, again, when you say clinical bacteriology, it is focused on isolating, identifying, and studying bacteria that cause disease to humans. Again, when you say clinical bacteriology, you focus on isolating, identifying, and studying bacteria that cause disease to humans. So, in other words, in clinical bacteriology, you will only study the clinically significant microorganisms. You will only study the clinically significant bacteria. Okay, yeah. So please note that your bacteriology, we study bacteriology because, of course, your bacteria, they are among the most abundant and diverse organisms that is present here on Earth. Aside from that, please note that we study bacteriology because of their rapid evolution and genetic exchange. Please note that is one important thing because this rapid evolution and genetic exchange of this bacteria drives antimicrobial resistance. And why are we studying antimicrobial resistance here? It is actually a concern of every healthcare provider. Antimicrobial resistance, meaning if they are resistant to the medication that you are giving, then the disease will not settle or the disease will not be cured. The bacteria will not be cleared off. Okay, the bacteria will remain inside the body. Okay, and yes, that is actually a concern because if every microorganism, if this bacteria will be resistant, or if they will be resistant to the what they call this, to the newest or to the most effective antimicrobial or to the most effective antibacterial agent, then it will cause a problem. Okay, it will cause a problem because since they are resistant, they will not be cleared off. And the disease will not be cured accordingly. Anyhow, okay, also we study bacteria or we study bacteriology to understand bacterial behavior, which is critical for public health and clinical practice. The bacterial behavior, the behavior of the bacteria, though they thrive in this temperature, or they want a moist one, or are they well, though they grow in this environment, in this type of environment, or whatsoever, are they transmitted via like this or whatsoever. Okay, and so yes, understanding again the clinical behavior or the bacterial behavior is important for public health and in the clinical practice accordingly. And here, okay, and so I will give you a brief, yes, a very brief one, a very brief introduction on your sample, yeah, on your sample processing, gram staining, and yes, as well as acid fast staining accordingly. And yes, for bacteriology, it covers both pathogenic and commensal flora. Okay, for clinical bacteriology, it covers, yes, those. pathogenic microorganisms as well as those opportunists, as well as these opportunistic microorganisms. Anyhow, at your bacteria. Your bacteria, they are prokaryotic microorganisms. They are prokaryotic, meaning they do not have a true nuclei and they do not have what do you call this? They lack the characteristic of true cell. And yes, in contrast to your eukaryotic cell, they are actually the true cell. This prokaryotic cell, they are somewhat the not true cell. They lack your nuclei. Instead, they have a nucleoid. Or they do not have a nucleus, they only have a nucleoid. Anyway, they are prokaryotic microorganisms and they have simple structures, but then they have a diverse metabolic capabilities. Okay, yes, they are simple, they have a simple cell structure, but then they have diverse metabolic capabilities. That is why they can cause a wide range of infection. So, in this one, you will take a look at the morphology of the bacteria or the morphology, the shape, uh, the arrangement, the structural component of the bacteria. Aside from that, you will also take a look at the physiology, like the growth requirements, the environmental adaptations, as well as the metabolism of the bacteria. Okay, as pathogenesis, because it's clinical bacteriology. Okay, you will take a look at the pathogenesis of the disease. Okay, or yes, we will take a look at the mechanism of the disease or the disease progression, virulence factors that will somewhat uh, make the disease even grave, and the interactions with the host. Also, in bacteriology, you will what they call this classify this bacteria. There is what you call as taxonomy. Okay, and so taxonomy, and yes, there is taxonomy, naming of this bacteria or classification into this family, into that accordingly. This taxonomy, it is actually based on the phenotypic and genotypic traits. Anyhow, let's take a look. Yes, again, what we said, your bacteria, they are prokaryotic cells. Again, they do not have a true nuclei. And the DNA present is circular and is free in the cytoplasm. They do not have membrane-bound organelles. The cell wall, cell wall is present, and the cell wall is made of peptidoglycan. This peptidoglycan or the cell wall provides rigidity. And accordingly, your bacteria what they call this reproduces via binary fission. What else? They have a relatively small size at the zero point 0.5, okay, micrometers. Okay, and so or less than 5 micrometers. Okay, less than 5 micrometers accordingly. And yes, they are metabolically diverse because there are bacteria that require high temperature, or there are bacteria uh that requires carbon. There are bacteria that requires a specific nutrient and whatsoever. That is for your bacteria. Anyway, let's take a look at the structure of the bacteria. You have here the cell wall. The cell wall, okay, is made of peptidoglycan. The cell wall is made of peptidoglycan. Made of peptidoglycan. Okay, and so yes, for your gram-positive organisms, they have a thick peptidoglycan. For your gram-positive organisms, you have a thick peptidoglycan. There is teichoic acid and lipoteichoic acid that is present also. But then for gram-positive organisms, they do not have an outer they do not have an outer membrane accordingly. For your gram-negative organisms, yes, later on as we move through, we will take a look at your gram staining. Okay, and yes, what are your gram-positive and what are your gram-negative organism? Anyhow, you have your gram-negatives. For your gram-negative organisms, they have a thin peptidoglycan. They have a thin peptidoglycan. And a lipopolysaccharide is present in the outer membrane. A lipopolysaccharide is present in the outer membrane. And there is a periplasmic space that is somewhat filled with enzymes. That is somewhat filled with enzymes. Please note that there are also bacteria. Yeah, there are also bacteria that do not have okay, a cell wall. And mycoplasma is an example of a microorganism that does not have a cell wall, or an example of a bacteria that does not have a cell wall. Okay, your what do you call this? Your acid-fast bacilli, they have atypical cell walls. Your acid-fast bacilli, accordingly, they have a typical cell walls. This acid-fast bacilli, they have mycolic acids in their cell wall. They have mycolic acids in their cell wall. Anyhow, please note that this peptidoglycan, your peptidoglycan here is a glycoprotein. Yes, it is a glycoprotein. You have the glycan as the sugar backbone, and then you have a peptide cross-links here. And please note that it is otherwise known as murine. It is otherwise known as murine. It is also known as murine, your peptidoglycan. It is spelled as M-U-R-E-I-N. M-U-R-E-I-N. And yes, your peptidoglycan, this one is the target. Okay, it is the target of most of your, what do you call this? Most of your antibiotics or antibacterial agent. It is the target of most of your antibacterial agents or your antibiotics. Because of course, humans, okay, we do not have our human cells, we do not have peptidoglycan. And yes, it is safe to target your peptidoglycan because your bacteria or humans do not have peptidoglycan. And yes, again, the peptidoglycan, that is a target of most of your antibacterial agents. Anyhow, let's take a look at your external structure of your bacteria. You have here your flagella, you have villi or a fimbriae, and you have a capsule. Your flagella is utilized for motility. Your flagella is utilized for motility, and they are arranged. Okay, and so they are arranged. They can be monotrichous, lophotrichous, amphitrichous, and peritrichous accordingly. Okay, again, the flagella may be arranged, okay, into monotrichous, lophotrichous. When you say monotrichous, you only have one flagella that is located one side. Okay, lophotrichous, lophotrichous. It is a tuft or cluster of flagella that emerges from one or both ends accordingly. And then you have your amphitrichus. You have a single flagella at both ends. Okay, a single flagella at both ends or both sides of the bacteria. And then you have your peritrichus. It is the flagella is located all over the bacteria. Okay, the flagella is located all over the bacteria. Anyhow, you have your fimbriae or pili. You have your fimbriae or pili. They are utilized for adhesion. Okay, they are utilized for adhesion to host cells. And yes, you have your sex pili. You have your sex pili here that is utilized for conjugation. And then you have the capsule. Capsule, okay, your capsule here is a polysaccharide layer that is located outside. Okay, your capsule actually is what do you call this? Your capsule actually is an added, okay, an added protection to a bacteria. It is an added protection to a bacteria. That is why, accordingly, your encapsulated microorganisms, they are somewhat more difficult to kill, okay, than those that do not have a capsule. Anyhow, your capsules or the capsule of a bacteria is made of polysaccharide. And yes, they are anti-phagocytic or they evade phagocytosis. They evade phagocytosis. And please note that this capsule is the basis for your Calang reaction. It is the basis for your Calang or for the swelling reaction. And then you have your internal structure. Please note earlier we said that your bacteria, they are prokaryotic in nature. And yes, if you try to look back about your eukaryotic and the prokaryotic, your eukaryote, they have a true nuclei, while your prokaryote, they have a false nuclei. And you call that false nuclei as nucleoid. Okay, you call it as nucleoid. Anyway, your what do you call this? Your nucleoid. This is made of a single circular chromosome, and it does not have a nuclear membrane. Okay, it is a false nuclei. And then the ribosome is present. I mean, ribosome is present. Okay, ribosome is present inside your bacteria. If you try to remember your ribosome, it is responsible for protein synthesis. Okay, and so because bacteria, they are capable of producing proteins and enzymes. Anyway, okay, please note that your ribosome is somewhat the target of many antibiotic agents or antibacterial drugs. And then you have your plasmids. Your plasmids, they carry genes or resistance genes. They carry resistance genes. And somewhat this one is an added virulence factor. Okay, an added virulence factor. And then you have your uh, endospores. Okay, you have your endospores. Your endospores, please note, they are produced by the Bacillus and your Clostridium bacteria. And please note, they are highly resistant to heat, chemicals, and radiation. Okay, yeah. These endospores, they are highly resistant to heat, chemicals, and radiation. And yes, please note, this one is an added, what they call this, added virulence factor to your microorganisms, endospores. Okay, and so again, this spore formers. Okay, and so yes, they are what you call this, your spores or your endospores. They are formed in response to adversity. Okay, they are formed in response to adversity. Okay, and so somewhat another another way to survive, another way to evade death. Okay, and so that is for your endospores. And please note, they are highly resistant to heat, chemicals, and radiation. Okay, and so your spore formers, please note, your spore formers, okay, and so they are relatively difficult to, what they call this, they are relatively difficult to clear off, or they are relatively difficult to kill. Okay. And then you have your storage granules. You have your storage granules. Okay, a very good example of a bacteria that possess storage granules. You have your Corynebacterium, Coryne. Your Corynebacterium, it has a storage granules. Or in other references, this storage granules, they call it as inclusion bodies. Okay, so yes, you already know. Okay, I already presented the internal and external structures present in a bacteria. So let's take a look at the classification. Please note, your bacteria can be classified based on the shape. Okay, and so can be cocci or can be bacilli. And then they can be classified based on the arrangement and based on Gram's reaction. Okay, that is why you have a gram-positive organism and a gram-negative organism. And then, yes, they can be classified based on acid-fast stain reaction. There are organisms, there are bacteria that are classified as acid fast bacilli and non-acid fast bacilli. And then, okay, and so other classification is the bacteria can be classified based on the requirement to survive based, okay, and so in, let's say for example, for temperature, okay, there are bacteria that can thrive at higher temperature, and there are bacteria that can thrive at lower temperature. And yes, you have your thermophiles, okay, and then you have your oxygen requirement. Okay, this time you have bacteria that requires oxygen, that they really require, and there are bacteria that somewhat do not. Okay, they only require a small amount of oxygen. Okay, this time you have your aerobes, and then you have anaerobes, facultative aerobes, and whatsoever. Okay, you have aerobic and anaerobic bacteria. And then, of course, for your others, you have your lithotropes and the rest. Anyway, your bacteria, you have here the shapes of your bacteria. Okay, you have here the shapes. When you say cocci, they are spherical in nature. They are round, they are sphere. Okay, and so parang bola. Okay, and so look at a basketball, the ball. Okay, that is sphere. Okay, it is sphere. Please note that sphere, circle, and round, these are different things. Okay, and so they are different things. When you say sphere, that ball, okay, that basketball is a sphere. Okay, and your cocci, they are spherical. They are spherical in nature. Cocci, coccus. Anyhow, example of your cocci, you have your staphylococcus. You have streptococcus, enterococcus, and the rest of your cocci. What else? You have your bacilli. You have your bacilli. Okay, and so your bacilli, they are rod shaped. They are rod shaped. Okay, imagine your steering rod. Okay, that is a rod. Okay, when you say rod shaped, okay, and so they are rod shaped. They are taller, or yes, than wider. Anyway, and then yes, sorry, an example of a bacilli, you have your uh yes, your Bacillus anthracis. Okay, you have your E. coli. Okay, and the rest of your bacilli. Okay, your Enterobacteriaceae. Okay, your Enterobacterales, sorry. Your Enterobacterales, they are bacilli in nature. Anyhow, you have your Coccobacilli. You have your Coccobacilli here. Your Coccobacilli, they are short rods. Okay, they are short rods. Stubby. Okay, they are stubby rods. They are short rods. Okay, shorter than a bacilli. Example of a cocoa bacilli, you have your Haemophilus influenzae. Haemophilus influenzae is a cocoa bacilli. Cocoa bacilli accordingly. And yes, you have your spirals. Okay, you have your spirals. Your spirals, they are rigid. Okay, and so spirals. Okay, rigid spirals accordingly. Your spirochetes, okay, they are spirals. Your treponema, your borrelia, and then you have your pleomorphic. Pleomorphic organisms are those that have variable shape. Please note earlier we said that Mycoplasma pneumoniae, Mycoplasma does not have, okay, Mycoplasma does not have a peptidoglycan or does not have a cell wall. Okay, it does not have a cell wall. That is why they are pleomorphic. The shape is variable for your mycoplasma. When you say pleomorphic bacteria, they do not have a definite shape. They do not have a definite shape. Your arrangement of bacteria. So they can be in singles, of course. They can be in pairs. Okay, you have here your bacteria can be in pairs. They can be in chains. This one in pairs, this one in chains, and then they can be in clusters, like a grapes, cluster of grapes. And then they can be in fours or in tetrads, is what you call. And then can be in eights. Okay, they can be in eights, and then they can be in or sarsia. When you say eights, they are sarcina. Okay, and then you have your palisades. Your bacteria can be in palisades. They are side by side accordingly. They can be a side by side. Okay, that is for your arrangements. That is why please note that in reading Gramstein, you describe the okay, you describe what you see if the bacteria is arranged in pairs, in chains, or in clusters, or in singles. Okay, as such. So you have a diplococci. Your Neisseria is a diplococci organism. Your streptococcus, they appear in chains. Okay, your streptococcus, they are in chains. Your uh Staphylococcus, your Staphylococcus, they are in pairs. They appear in pairs. And yes, your what do you call this? Your palisades, a good example of a bacteria that exhibit or yes, that exhibit that are arranged in palisades, yeah, Corynebacterium. Corynebacterium. Okay, you have here the arrangements of your bacteria. Okay, so let's take a look at your gram staining. Your gram staining, this one is frequently performed. It is actually performed in the microbiology or in the bacteriology section of the laboratory. And yes, what is the purpose of your gram staining? It differentiates bacteria based on your cell wall structure. Okay, for gram positive, they have a thick cell wall. For your gram negative, they have a thin cell wall accordingly. And please note that gram staining is performed on almost all specimens received in the bacteriology section. Okay, it is received on all, it is performed on almost all specimens, almost all specimens received in the bacteriology section. Okay, so the reagents that are utilized here, you have your crystal violet as the primary stain, and then you have the iodine or it's the mordant, and then 95% alcohol as the decolorizer. And then, or yes, alcohol acetone as the decolorizer, and then you have safranin as the counter stain. Safranin as the counter stain accordingly. Of course, the first procedure is to flood the smear with crystal violet. Of course, prior to staining, you need to first prepare your smear. Prepare your smear. Okay, first is to prepare a smear prior to staining. You need first a smear. You need first an unstained smear. Okay, a dry smear. And then first is you flood you flood your what you call this, you flood the smear with crystal violet. Okay, you flood the smear with crystal violet. Please note that the time for each, okay, and so the time for each component of the stain differs per institution. Okay, so first again is you have your crystal violet. You flood your smear with your crystal violet for at least 1 minute. Okay, for at least 1 minute. Again, the time here differs per institution. Okay, you check the standard operating procedure of your institution prior to performing gram staining. And then you have iodine. After that, okay, you remove the stain, you remove the crystal violet, okay, and then you add or you flood with iodine. You flood the smear with iodine. Your iodine here again, this is the mordant. And yes, for at least 1 minute. After that, you decolorize. You decolorize again. Timing, it depends, or yes, on the policy of the institution. You decolorize for like 5 to 10 seconds, or based on the policy of the institution. And then after that, you add or you flood the smear with the counter stain. You flood the smear with the counter stain accordingly. Okay, so what is the color of your crystal violet? It's violet or it's purple. Okay, and then your iodine here will, what they call this, it is immortant and will, what they call this, it will penetrate the cell wall of the bacteria and will chemically bind with your crystal violet, okay, making it, the purpose is for a it is immortant. And then you have your decolorizer to decolorize, and then safranin. Of course, for gram-positive organisms, the the crystal violet is absorbed. Okay, the crystal violet is absorbed. Actually, both. For both gram-positive and gram-negative, the crystal violet is absorbed. The iodine is absorbed by both. And then for your 95% alcohol as a decolorizer, for gram-positive, they are not washed. I mean, the your 95% alcohol for gram-positive, the crystal violet is not washed, while for gram-negative, the crystal violet is washed away. And your counter-stain safranin, okay, your counter-stain safranin is red or orange in color, okay, and so it is red or orange color. After application of your safranin, okay, it is not absorbed accordingly by your gram positive. The gram negative will absorb your safranin. Okay, they will absorb your safranin because the crystal violet is washed off. Okay, so the result for gram staining, gram positive organisms are blue or violet in color. They are blue or violet in color. And then your gram-negative organisms, they are red or pink in color. They are red or pink in color accordingly. Okay, and so they are red or pink in color. Again, for gram-positive, they retain the crystal violet iodine complex. They retain the crystal violet iodine complex, while for your gram-negative organisms, the the crystal violet iodine complex is washed off. They are decolorized, and they take off the counter stain, which is the safranin, Okay, so please note that all all cocci are gram-positive except Neisseria, Moraxella, and Vilonella. All cocci are gram-positive except Neisseria, Moraxella, and Vilonella. For bacilli, all bacilli are gram-negative except Okay, I will give it as an assignment to you. Again, all bacilli are gram-negative except, okay, you know the exception. Please know the exception. That is your assignment. Anyhow, acid-fast staining. Please note that your acid-fast bacilli or your acid-fast bacteria, they possess a lipid-rich cell wall. And this lipid that is present in the cell wall of this acid-fast bacteria, you call them as mycolic acid. You call them as mycolic acid. And yes, this acid-fast bacteria, they resist decolorization no, by acid alcohol during the acid-fast staining procedure. Okay, please note that your acid-fast bacilli, once they are stained with your carbolfuchsin, they retain the color despite decolorization, despite the treatment with acid alcohol. Okay, so for your acid-fast bacilli, they have the color pink or red. Okay, for your non-acid fast bacilli, they have a blue or yes, they have a blue color. Okay, that is yeah. Okay, so your reagents, you have your carbolfuchsin. This one is your primary stain, and then you have your mordant. You have your heat and then what they call the sturgitol for the cold method. Please note for Ziehl-Neelsen, it uses heat. For Ziehl-Neelsen, okay, for the hot method, the Ziehl-Neelsen uses heat as the mordant. Okay, and then you have your quinone. For quinone, it utilizes turgitol or higher phenol concentrations accordingly. And then your decolorizer, you have acid alcohol, you have 3% HCl in ethanol accordingly. And then the counter stain is either methylene blue or malachite green. Methylene blue or malachite green. Please note that this one, the initial stain, the carbolfuchsin is retained by acid-fast positive organism. Okay. For non-acid fast, the carbolfuchsin is washed off, okay, by the acid alcohol. It is decolorized by the acid alcohol. And the methylene blue or the malachite green, it is absorbed by your non-acid fast bacilli, giving you their color blue. Anyway, that is for your acid fast staining. Okay, let's take a look real quick about your steps in Ziehl-Neelsen, the hot method. Okay, of course, you need here a smear. Same with gram saying you need a smear here. You need a dry smear. Okay, you need a dry smear. Okay, you flood it. Okay, you flood the smear with carbolfuchsin. You flood the smear with carbolfuchsin and then apply heat until it steams. Okay, you apply heat. Okay, direct flame can be utilized here. Okay, yes, when I was an intern, yes, when I was a medtech, then yes, we utilized the hot method. Okay, after flooding with carbolfuchsin, you apply heat. Okay, please note you apply heat until it steams. Until it steams. Okay, there is a steam that rises from the stain. And then after that, you rinse with water. Yes, sorry. Apply heat until steaming. Okay, and so soon as the steam is seen, you remove the heat and you allow it to stand for for some time. You allow it to stand for some time. And then after that, you rinse with water and then decolorize using your acid alcohol. Okay, and then you counter stain. You counter stain accordingly. You counter stain and then rinse, air dry, and examine. For your quinoa, the cold method, okay, and so same steps with the hot method, but then the mordant, the heat is replaced with tergitol or uh, greater concentrations of phenol. Okay, so for the positive result, I mean for your acid-fast bacilli, they are stained red or pink. Okay, they are stained red or pink, and for the non-acid fast bacilli, they are stained blue or violet. They are stained blue or violet, which is exactly opposite of the colors in gram staining. Okay, exactly opposite of the colors in gram staining. Please note that your mycobacterium, okay, your mycobacterium, they are acid fast positive, or they are acid fast bacilli, or they gave a positive result with acid fast staining. And yes, you have your requirements to survive, the requirements of a bacteria to survive. Please note that there is an optimum condition for each bacteria to survive. Anyway, let's take a look. You have your oxygen requirement, you have the pH requirement, you have your temperature, you have your osmotic requirement, and then nutritional requirement. Please note that for your oxygen requirement, you have bacteria that are called as obligate aerobes, obligate anaerobes. If you say when you say anaerobe, they do not require oxygen or they require a low, very low amount of oxygen. When you say aerobes, obligate aerobes, they require oxygen. You have what you call as facultative aerobes, microaerophils, and aerotolerant. You also have pH, an optimum pH for a bacteria. You have a bacteria that requires a low pH and you call them as acidophils. And then you have a bacteria that requires alkaline pH or bacteria that requires a neutral, somewhat neutral pH. And then you have temperature. Okay, there is an optimum temperature for a bacteria also. Okay, you have thermophils. For your thermophils, they require what they call this hot, okay, temperature somewhat greater than 45 degrees Celsius. Mesophils, okay, 20 to 45, okay. Most of your pathogens actually are mesophils. And then psychrophils, okay, less than 20 degrees Celsius. And then you have your osmotic pressure requirement, you have your nutritional requirement for your uh, chemolithotropes, sorry, and the rest. Okay, and so that is for your requirements to survive. Moisture, also, of course, aside from that, moisture. Okay, and so but then please note that bacteria can be classified based on their requirements to survive. Okay, for the laboratory diagnosis, please note that to have the most reliable or the most accurate result, you need to start with the correct manner of collection. Correct manner of collection, correct site of collection, and correct proper handling and transport. Again, specimen collection, of course, again, for bacteriology, for bacteriology, you need a sterile sample containers. You need sterile sample containers for this one. Okay, and in collecting, you observe aseptic technique because we do not want contamination in our samples. We do not want contamination in the samples. Correct transport. Okay, if you need a transport media, then you use transport media. Okay, and please avoid drying because usually if the sample is dry or if the swab, okay, is dry, then the laboratory might uh, reject. Okay, please note that almost all of your body fluids, almost all of your parts of the body can be subjected to culture and sensitivity to microbiologic study. Anyway, and then for the diagnosis still, you have your staining. Okay, you staining and do microscopy. Your staining, you have gram staining and then acid fast. They are actually the most commonly employed staining techniques in I mean in bacteriology. And then studying or examining the smear using the microscope. And then culture and sensitivity, biochemical testing, and rapid tests. Rapid tests. Okay, rapid testing. Please note that in culture, when you do culture and sensitivity, you make use of culture media. What are examples of culture media? You have McConkey agar, nutrient broth, okay, and the rest of your culture media. For biochemical tests, examples of biochemical tests employed in or done in bacteriology, you have your uh, oxidase test, catalase test, and the rest of your test. Your rapid tests, okay, and so your MALDI-TOF, it is actually done in in bacteriology. But then most of your antigen tests to detect disease, they are done under the serology section. They are done under the serology section. Okay, again, for your specimen collection, you should collect from the correct site. Okay, and so use sterile containers or a transport system and avoid contamination with normal flora. We do not want contamination. Actually, in almost all, we do not want contamination. And don't forget the label. You label properly the name of the patient, the date and the time, and the site of collection. If, yes, if it's blood, okay, you label, you place the site. If it is collected from the right arm, then you write it down. If it is a swab, okay, wound swab, and you include the location. That is for your sample collection. What about for transport and storage? For transport, you transport immediately to avoid drying. You bring it immediately to the laboratory to avoid drying. Or if not, you make use of appropriate transport media. And yes, you maintain it at proper temperature. Okay, please note that you need to avoid delays here. Avoid delays, prevent the growth or death of pathogens. Okay, to avoid growth or death of pathogens. Of course, you as a laboratorian, you need to check the sample quality, the sample integrity, and the rest. Okay, that is for your laboratory. So let's take a look at your culture and sensitivity general algorithm in the bacteriology. Yes, after you did your clerical work, you did log, you did check the sample integrity and all, then you do your technical work. Okay, and so you do your culture and sensitivity. Please note that first thing is to do perform gram stain. Perform gram stain. Here is the rule in culture and sensitivity. If the doctor's request is only culture and sensitivity, please do gram staining. Even if it did not request, the doctor did not request gram staining. But then, okay, that gram stain result will not be released to the doctor if he did not request for a gram stain. Because the rule is for, okay, for all samples, okay, and so for all samples, for culture insensitivity, you need to perform initial gram stain. Perform initial gram stain on all samples for culture and sensitivity. Perform initial gram stain on all samples for culture insensitivity, even if the doctor did not request for gram stain. But then, please note, there is one sample wherein, okay, you are not required to do initial gram stain. And that sample is blood. Okay, and so initial gram stain for blood is a no, no. Okay, again, exception is blood. Perform initial gram stain on all samples for culture and sensitivity, even if the doctor did not request for such, except for your blood. Except for blood. Do not perform initial gram stain. Okay, do not perform initial gram stain because, again, please note in your initial gram stain, it will give you actually a snapshot. It will assess. Okay, and so it will give you, yes, the gram reaction will somewhat give you an idea what is present in there. Okay, the morphology, the arrangement, presence of WBCs, and whatsoever. Okay, this initial gram stain will guide you, or it will guide the culture media selection and urgency accordingly. And then you have here your culture media. You inoculate onto a culture media. Okay, please note that there is a culture media for urine samples. There is a culture media intended for, there is a set of culture media intended for swabs. There is a culture media intended for sputum. There is a culture media intended for CSF. Okay, and so again, examples of culture media, you have blood agar, chocolate agar, McConkey agar, okay, nutrient broth, and the rest. Of course, in inoculation, you do your stick plate method. Okay, and then after that, you incubate. Usually, incubation is done at 37 or 35, sorry. Incubation of the culture media or incubation of the sample, or yes, the inoculated bacteria is done at 35 to 37 degrees Celsius. But then it depends. Okay? And so yes, based on the requirement. Okay, you have an anaerobic or aerobic requirement for this one. And then after incubation, you examine the culture plates. Okay, examine after 18 or after 24 hours, you examine the culture plates. You check for the colony morphology or the size, the shape of the colony or presence of hemolysis, the odor, if there is pigment that is produced and whatsoever. Okay, and then you do preliminary identification. Preliminary identification, you perform rapid tests based on the colony type. Okay, and so yes, you have oxidase, coagulase, and the rest of your preliminary ID. And then you do biochemical identification. Please note that this one, preliminary ID and biochemical identification, this one is the conventional method. This one is the conventional method. Okay, conventional method. Nowadays, kasi you have Vitek, you have Malditoff. Okay, and so after the growth, then yes, you did select. Okay, and so place them in the Vitek. Okay, the Vitek will identify. Okay, please note that these are for the conventional. And then, of course, you perform after biochemical identification. In biochemical identification, it will confirm the identity of the bacteria at the species level. And then after that, you perform antimicrobial susceptibility testing. Okay, kasi this is culture insensitivity. You perform antimicrobial susceptibility testing. Okay, you perform can be Kirby power diffusion or what you call this broth microdilution or whatsoever. Okay, and then yes, after that you read and interpret your AST. Okay, yes, you read, you measure the zone of inhibition. Okay, the zone diameters or zone of inhibitions, and then you interpret it as susceptible or sensitive or intermediate or resistant based on your standard accordingly. Okay, that is for your AST. Your algorithm, your specimen, initial gram stain, and then after that, inoculate, and then you check, okay, the colony. If subculture is necessary, then you do subculture, and then you do secondary gram stain, and then perform biochemical tests, and then you do susceptibility testing. This is for the conventional or for the manual method. Okay, for the manual or conventional method. But then nowadays we have Vitek, we have Multitoph. Okay, and so right after this one, right after uh subculture and isolation, you can do Vitek na. Okay, a machine will do it na. So I guess we will end here. Let's continue some other time. And this has been Gael, reminding you to live fully, love deeply, love often, keep learning, and never forget to enjoy the ride. And as you move forward, may you always choose curiosity over fear, kindness over convenience, and growth over comfort. Celebrate your small victories, honor your quiet moments, and trust that every step, no matter how uncertain, shapes the story you are meant to tell. The world is wide, your time is precious, and your journey is uniquely yours. Go make it extraordinary. Thank you so much. Thank you, and see you around.